I think the main situation with misconceptions is not understanding what might works in the US might not work in Mexico or any other country. Mexican candidates most likely will have more personal conversation and they want to engage that way. The industry is mainly led by white men. That's something that we all know, and that's something that we want to change because we want to provide more opportunities to a diverse talent. It is important to have education inside of the company because if your goal is to have a diverse workforce, you want to hire more women in leadership roles, you want to have trans and non-binary people joining your team, you have to make sure that the space is already safe for them. I've had some experiences where people think like, oh, it's cheaper to hire in Mexico. That's a huge misconception in the market. One thing I always recommend is to reach out to recruiters. They will learn your name, they will identify your experience, and when they have a role, they will reach out.
So welcome back to Default Global. Today we have an exceptional guest, Maria Canton, who is currently leading talent, equity, and belonging programs at Zillow. She has over a decade of experience in recruitment, diversity, and inclusion roles at the companies like Lyft, Bosch, Tech Mahindra, and now Zillow. Not only she has helped top US companies like Zillow expand into Mexican talent market, but she's also a strong advocate for creating inclusive and diversity workplaces. So welcome, Maria, to our show.
Thank you, Pete. Thanks for having me today. I'm excited to have this conversation.
Absolutely. So, Maria, I would love to start with your journey, basically. Yeah. So you've had this impressive career leading recruitment and diversity programs across different global companies. So maybe can you share a bit about how you started in the recruitment field and how that led you to focus on diversity and inclusion, right? So was there any kind of aha moment for a specific or maybe specific experience that made you realize that this was a direction you wanted to take?
Well, and overall about me, I was born and raised in Guadalajara, Mexico. I lived in a few other cities because of work, then returned to my hometown. And in my career, I started in recruitment around 11 years ago. And I've always been collaborating with global companies, as you were mentioning in that introduction. So while I was working in recruitment there, I started looking at a lot of situations around diversity, around misconceptions from Mexican culture and also from other countries' culture, like some misconceptions that we have around US-based companies or Indian companies, which are big in tech here in Mexico. So I was looking at the need of some information to make better environments at work. So I started doing some work in learning about gender equity in LATAM. I started doing some work in learning about DEI because some years ago it wasn't a very known term for Mexico. So I was just like, okay, there must be someone doing something about this, but I want to learn. So that's where I started doing some cultural trainings while I was working at Bosch, for example. I was participating in the onboarding experience, and then we were having a lot of people coming from India to live here in Mexico. And they were also in need of that information, of course, because they're moving to a different country. You have to learn the culture. You have to understand even how the money works or how to rent a place. So all those things led me to just learn more about it. On the side of my day-to-day work, I was also working with some gender and sexual education projects. So I think right now it's a point of my career where I can merge both of them, and I can just be like, okay, we need diversity, we need learning experiences that are understandable no matter no matter where you are right now with remote work, it's more usual to have coworkers that are not in the same city or not in the same country. So I think that's basically what led me to start learning about this.
That's awesome. In fact, it's incredible how early experiences can shape such a long-term career focus, right? So, look, you mentioned you helped a bunch of companies to expand to the Mexican talent market, right? And I know that many U.S. founders and executives listening to us right now and eager to learn more about the Mexican talent market. So, considering your experience helping global companies like again Lyft, Zillow, Tech Mahindra enter the Mexican market, I would love to hear more your thoughts on this. So, and you mentioned this as well. So let's talk a bit about this part. What are some of the biggest misconceptions U.S. companies have when trying to hire in Mexico, and how can they better approach the process?
I think there's a lot of information around this question. I'll try to make it short. Um, I think the main situation with misconceptions is not understanding that what might works in the US might not work in Mexico or any other country. I think when you look at the workforce through the lens of US, it will be definitely different than if you have someone locally to let you know what way to follow or what's the path for building a team or the marketing strategies or branding. I think something that has been very helpful is to trust your team in Mexico, that they will let you know what works and what doesn't. Um, Culturally, there's differences where, for example, during a tech interview, Mexican candidates most likely will have a more personal conversation and they want to engage that way. And in the US, it's more like, okay, show me your tech knowledge, and if you work with a global company before, because they want to know if we understand their culture, but sometimes they're not too interested in understanding our culture. So I think that's an important point. And also, when it comes to explaining about your experience, sometimes in Mexico, we're more, the tendency, it's more to explain your, your wins as a team and not individually. It's more like, oh, my team did this or my team did that, because you don't want to sound arrogant, like, oh, I know everything, I did this by myself. And sometimes that not having that knowledge can lead to a biased interview where people say, okay, it was a team win, it wasn't a personal win. And what I see in the US is that candidates tend to mention their wins individually. So those little changes in the interview can make a big impact in how you hire or how you understand how the candidate is sharing or just answering those questions. Like having that knowledge of the culture might lead to a better interview, like
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's
more
so
aligned.
true. So true, because from my experience, it is so important to clear up those misconceptions early, right? So
Yeah.
I've seen companies make assumptions about certain markets, and frankly speaking, it can lead to missed opportunities or even like a failed expansions, right? Do you agree with me?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think an interviewer's training with cultural context will be a great impact in the result of hiring or building a team here in Mexico.
Yeah. So, and when companies like Zillow, Lyft entered the Mexican market, what were what were some of the specific strategies they employed to attract the right talent? Did you have to adapt this traditional U.S. hiring methods to fit local needs, or you did something different? Can you talk more about this?
Well, first, I think both of my experiences at Lyft and Zillow, they were very focused on understanding the culture. So I think that was a big win when it comes to hire a new team. Um, I think we have the same interviewing process, but it had a little adjustment when it comes to the number of interviews. For example, people in the U.S. might be used to have like a tech screening and then a on-site interview, and this will be like a month and a half process of interviews and sharing. Some work during this process, and here in Mexico we were not used to this until some years ago. So that was also a thing that we needed to focus on, like making sure the candidate will understand that this was a process and the goal of having this process, because we need to have and keep engagement during this, because the candidates will be like, oh my god, it has been like a month already, I've been through 3 4 interviews, and like when it's gonna be done, right? Like when am I gonna have an answer? And especially right now that a lot of tech companies are in Mexico, and engineers, developers especially, they have a bunch of recruiters on their LinkedIn messages. So they don't want to spend 2 months in a process, because they're also having some other processes going on. So I think that open communication with the candidates, adjusting the interviewing process to make it shorter, or as short as we can, because of course we have to go through that and understand if someone is a good fit, or if they have the knowledge, the potential, and everything. But at the end of the day, I think having that engagement with the candidate and having open communication, explaining the context on why are you doing this process and what's the goal of us having all these conversations before you join the company, I think that that will be the key for me.
So now you've been a huge advocate for diversity and belonging, right? Again, currently working on initiatives at Zillow. So, in your view, how important is it for global companies to not only hire remotely, but also ensure that their teams are diverse and inclusive across regions like Mexico? Can we talk about this?
Of course, that's my favorite topic.
Okay.
So I think it is important because, first, the industry is mainly led by white men. That's something that we all know. And that's something that we want to change, because we want to provide more opportunities to a diverse talent. I will go to privilege. It's a big thing, because it is a privilege to be a Mexican that it's bilingual and also have a degree in engineering, or have the opportunity to learn how to develop and all those things. It is a privilege. So it is hard when it comes to diversity, because if you want to hire a really diverse team, you have to be open minded to have some other roles around it. And you have to be open to hire junior talent, medium talent, because what I've seen in the market is that when companies focus on only senior hiring, then it reached to a point where you're not able to hire anymore. So I think considering some women leadership programs inside of the company, that's also very attractive in the market, and it's also something that will help you with the retention and also to develop the talent. Because one thing that is real here in Mexico is that women get less challenging projects because of a lot of gender bias that we have. And there are other identities as well. Like, we're always focusing on men and women, but there are more identities out there that it's also part of the diverse culture. So I think it is important to have education inside of the company, because if your goal is to have a diverse workforce and you want to hire more women in leadership roles, you want to have trans and non-binary people joining your team, you have to make sure that the space is already safe for them. So you have to make sure that people inside of the company is educated, and also that you have strategies to include all of them to have a real impact in the community when it comes to building your own team. Because I understand that the business have a goal to build a team, to go and have like revenue and all those things that are important for a company. But when it comes to the human side, I think it's very important to consider to create a real impact in the community. Because if you're coming here, you have to be good part of the community. If not, then what's the point, right? So I think that's the most important thing, to make sure that your team is well educated, to be a safe space for the people that is joining, and also to focus on having diversity in your roles, so you can make sure to include everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. It is one thing to just to hire remotely, but building an inclusive team, right across borders, is a whole different challenge, a whole different story, right? So with that, and you mentioned this, but let's go a bit deeper. So how do you balance the need for cultural integration in Mexican teams with the global standards of diversity and inclusion that companies like Zillow basically promote?
I think one of the most important points is having, again, an educated team, because diversity looks different here and there, right? Here, for example, in Mexico, we don't have veterans. Or here in Mexico, Black community looks different that Black community looks in the US. We have different types of racism. I'm not sure if that's the right term. I want to say racismo. It looks different here and there, because we have those situations with indigenous community. We have less opportunities with indigenous community in Mexico. So I think having a well-educated team in the US, it's also important for them to understand the needs and the definition of diversity here, so we can get together and build a strategy that will be working here and there, or globally in general, not necessarily only in Mexico, because some of these companies have hiring processes in Mexico and also other places of Latam. So it wouldn't be the same to hire someone in Mexico that is to hire someone in Argentina, right? Like you have to learn the specifics of each place. So I will say learning about the region that you're hiring in, it's basic to start and to think about a diverse team.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, like localizing, but at the same time without losing like a side of the broader company values is kind of super important. Yeah. Okay, so I mentioned that leading recruitment and inclusion for international expansions brings different unique challenges, right? Again, you touched this a bit, but what were some of the toughest maybe obstacles you have faced, like when helping U.S. companies expand to Mexico?
I think misconceptions. Misconceptions will be a big one. I've had some experiences where people think like, oh, it's cheaper to hire in Mexico, right? That's a huge misconception in the market. I haven't had that in a personal experience at work, but I have that because we know about the industry. You know, as a recruiter, you're always talking to other recruiters, talking to other companies, just to make sure that you understand the industry. And that is very common to think like, oh, why does this person wants that much money? Because I mean, they're in Mexico, it must be cheaper. And then it's like, well, it's not. If you wanna if you want a senior developer, it will be expensive because that's a lot of work. So those misconceptions, Also
They
hiring.
know what they worth. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Other misconception, not misconception, but I'll say it's a bias that we have here in Mexico. It's around the gender. Um, Having interviewers that are not prepared for interviewing trans community. That is something that I've faced some years ago. An interviewer using the wrong pronouns during the whole interview. Of course, it was a very uncomfortable situation for the candidate, and it was a very uncomfortable situation for me as a recruiter to be just put in the face there and say, "Hey, I'm sorry, this person didn't know." And on my personal perspective, I was like, this person was just wrong. Like that's not okay. But then you have to be professional and be like, okay, the person who will explain and say, we are sorry for your experience. So I think that is something that we need to have, like this education for the interviewers, just to make sure that everybody will be comfortable and respected during the interview process. And around other topics about gender is that situation that I was mentioning, right? Like the challenges that women get in the industry when it comes to tech. The statistics are there. Women get less challenging projects, or they do senior work with a medium role. So it's harder for us to build our career and to grow in tech because it is just the gender situation. So I think those are the biggest challenges.
And looking ahead, how do you see the Mexican talent market evolving, right? Especially with the rise of remote work, especially that bunch of international and global companies, are coming to the Mexican talent market, right? So, do you think that there will be increased competition for top tech talent from international players, and just in general, how do you see the Mexican talent market in next like 5 years?
Definitely, I see a higher amount of companies now doing DEI work, taking it seriously because it has been in the policies for a while, but action, it has been a lower rate of action, I will say. Right now, I think from 5 years from now, I think inclusion and diversity will be a stronger team in the companies. Hopefully, in 10 years from now, we don't need that, right? Like, we don't need a team that will be specifically working on being inclusive. My personal wish is that at some point my role is not needed and is just there.
It's a cool
So,
point. Yeah.
but I think 5 years from now, being realistic with the market, I see an increase of women in leadership roles. I think companies are looking at that right now, and we have a lot of people graduating from in engineering and development careers. So 5 years from now, these people will be senior. So I think it will be a better perspective for women career in the industry. And also, I think there's a lot of information about how to be inclusive, gender neutral language. It's being more accepted in the industry because in the beginning it was hard to to use it, and now I see it in my own career. When I started, I was called ridiculous because I was using gender neutral language. And right now, I work so people learn how to use it. So I see a huge difference between when I started and now. So I think 5 years from now, I'm very optimistic with the with the tech industry in Mexico.
Cool, cool. Maybe you can give me a couple lessons, with that.
Yes.
Awesome. And probably my last question. So for those tech talent that you basically talked about, for those tech talent in Mexico who aspire like to work for US based companies like Zillow, what advice would you give them to stand out and secure like these opportunities?
You're asking about potential candidates or people that are
Yeah, yeah, who are
okay.
ready to apply.
Okay. So one thing I always recommend is to reach out to recruiters because they will learn your name, they will identify your experience, and when they have a role, they will reach out.
You mean
So
like before they apply? Yeah,
yeah,
just to reach out
some
to a specific recruiter. Okay.
exactly. Some people are afraid to reach out to recruiters because they don't want to be like, oh, I don't want to I don't want to sound that I'm so in need that I'm reaching out, but it's never like that. And we as recruiters, we always appreciate the candidate coming to us first. So I think if, like, for example, if your dream job is to work at Zillow, or if your dream work is to work at Disney, you go on LinkedIn and you type Zillow recruiter or Disney recruiter. And then you will see a lot of people and you will see the country and the place that they live in. So you look for the one that is closer to you. You reach out and you say, hey, my name is Maria and my dream job is to work with you. This is my resume. This is my experience. Whenever you have time, can you let me know if I will be a good fit or if you have any open roles? And a lot of recruiters will take the time just to say, hey, you know what, like you should work in this a little bit more, or you're ready. Like, because sometimes we don't understand that we're ready to apply for a job and we feel like, I might not be ready. I don't know if I'm a good fit yet. But you can just go and ask. Also to follow the social media of the companies, because sometimes we forget that when we're looking for a job, it's not that the company is testing us, it's also that we are testing the company. So following them on social media, just trying to see if they have programs for developing your career, or if they have programs to help the community, whatever your interest goes to. Try to find that information and see if that company will be a good fit for your career or your plans. And then if they are, then reach out to a recruiter and just ask for their advice, like, hey, what do I need to be a good candidate for you? And then I think that works.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you very much, Maria, for sharing your experiences and insights with us. I guess we have covered like everything from how U.S. companies can successfully enter the Mexican market to the importance of diversity and inclusion in global hiring. So I'm sure our listeners, like both U.S. executives and Mexican talent, will take away a lot of practical advice from this conversation. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for having me again, and I appreciate this invite. Thank you.